Hello and welcome to the In the Beginning podcast, episode 20, Angels, Demons, Faith, and Fiction. Last week we introduced you to Brandy Ange's young adult fantasy novel, Transgression. This week the podcast is brought to you by Rafa House, whose mission it is to end trafficking and the exploitation of children. Stay tuned to the end of the program to learn more about this wonderful organization, how proceeds from the purchase of Transgression are donated to this group, and how you can help Rafa House in their mission. First of all, let me go ahead and say Happy Mother's Day to my co-host over here, Marie.
Thank you.
That's all you get today. So what did you think about Transgression?
I love Transgression. It is just beautifully written. The characters you feel for right off the bat, I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, I wanted to read more. For those that don't know, we only get like the first chapter or two of a story, and whew, we had to ask for more. So yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. In fact, Transgression has received nothing less than 5 stars on both Amazon and Goodreads for all their reviews.
Matt said, I love this book. It is beautifully written with a well thought out plot. I would say it is now in the top 5 of my favorite books, and I will be recommending it to my friends. Cannot wait to read the next one.
Josh said, from beginning to end, Ange draws you into a world that recognizes the warfare between angels and demons. She uses vivid imagery to pull you into the story, so much so that I found myself forgetting it is not a movie.
And Katie said, whoa, Transgression grabs your attention within the first couple pages and doesn't let go until page 411. That's the last page if you're wondering. How long does it take for amazing books to be picked up for a movie? Because I need this to happen. I am so excited to watch these characters develop even more in book 2. So many secrets and stories left to tell. Do yourself a favor and buy this book.
And one Kindle customer, and again, update your names, people. It sounds like we're making up these reviews every time we just say generic Kindle customer, generic Amazon customer. But this Kindle customer said, I genuinely believe this book would make an excellent movie. It's a young adult book, but it's great for everyone. There is more substance to it than other young adult books, which rely on unrealistic, gushy romance. Beautifully written, full of purpose, and I absolutely love the fact that half the proceeds are going to the Rafa House, which brings healing and restoration to victims of human trafficking. Looks like there's a call for a movie. Hint, hint, Hollywood. This story has action, humor, love, but it also has angels, demons, and God. Marie spoke with the author recently about using faith in fiction.
As someone who has a degree in Bible study, what are your thoughts on using religion and religious content in fiction?
I'm actually a huge fan of using religious content and discussing religion through creative outlets like fiction. You saw C.S. Lewis do it with the Chronicles of Narnia and stuff, and I think that it's a great way for us to kind of process information and, play out different scenarios in our head to really develop our opinions on where we stand on not just religion, but, any number of topics. And I think fiction's a great way to kind of explore that.
Did you try to publish the story in a traditional sense? How did agents and/or publishing houses respond to the religious content?
I actually knew from the beginning that I really wanted to self-publish, and I did a fundraising pre-order campaign through a site called Publishizer, which is a great resource if you're a self-publishing author. Look into that one, but it queries for you to all the different publishers who could be interested based on how many pre-orders you sell. And so I was already planning on self-publishing, but publishers did get to look at my manuscript and look at my query, and I did get a lot of feedback. And a lot of them seemed, really interested in publishing the book, but I had already decided to self-publish. They were, I think, intrigued because it was action and stuff like that, and the target audience was young adult and that kind of thing, which, obviously, again, worked for C.S. Lewis. And so I think they liked the idea, and they really liked the themes discussed throughout and everything, and a lot of them came back with questions and advice and stuff, and actually added a lot more scenes with Shale and Luke based on that feedback. So it was great to hear what they had to say, and it was overwhelmingly positive, so it was pretty cool to get that experience. So thanks, Publishizer.
I wrote a book once and tried to get it published, and it dealt with angels, demons, God, the devil. But I had trouble getting it published, and I think the difference between my story and Brandy's is that she wrote Transgression for young people, whereas I wrote for adults. The experience took me away from writing while it motivated her. But through speaking to her and all the other wonderful indie authors that we've spoke with, like Paul Grover and Carmilla Boyes, I may pull that bad boy out. I might try doing it. I may try re-editing it and see if I can't get that published again. Your next topic with Brandy focuses on many issues agents have with religious content in fiction.
Do you feel that fictionalizing religious content could go against people's faith? Could it bring people to religion? Or do you feel that people can comfortably separate the two?
All of the above. I think fictionalizing religious content, in and of itself, I don't think could really go too much against people's faith because it is fiction. I think only if they take it too seriously and are bent on being offended, could that really be disruptive. You look at the Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and that was Jesus and stuff, but completely not Jesus at the same time. So it's like that was his idea of this is how he sees the Christ and the Messiah, and this is how he thinks that Jesus would speak and act and the things that he would say, and those kinds of things. And so it's just I think up to the person reading. Obviously, you can choose to get offended or you can choose to not get offended. As far as it being able to bring people to religion, I think definitely. I think there's a lot of people who read the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis and were like, oh, wow, like this is how Satan seeks to attack people. This is how the spiritual warfare aspect works. This is how demons, taunt us and tempt us and stuff like that. And so I think that it can definitely get people thinking more about religion and maybe making it a little bit easier for people to understand religion and for them to process what it is. And that's any religion, not just Christianity. Obviously there could be fiction on any number of religions and could, explain things the same way and make it easier for people to comprehend and therefore draw them closer to believing it because they understand it better. And I definitely think that people can comfortably separate the two. There's a lot of books out there that talk about religious things and are quite obviously fiction. And, if I took it too seriously, I could be offended, but I choose not to because it is a work of fiction and the author doesn't claim that anything that they wrote is true. And so as a story, I can definitely enjoy it. And so I think it's just up to the reader. But I definitely think that all of those things are possible.
Yeah, it's nice to see that Brandy can separate faith from fiction. The books we read and write are inspired by so many different facets of life. Just because they have religious content does not mean that the author is advocating for one belief or another. They were just inspired to create.
Speaking of inspiration, I asked Brandy if Dante's Inferno was one of her sources. We noticed that hell in Transgression agrees with Dante's icy ninth circle of hell.
Dante's Inferno was definitely a source of inspiration. I had actually already decided to make hell cold before I read Dante's Inferno, but then after reading it, I loved his imagery, and it was just beautiful. So I thought that was rather perfect. In addition to that, I would say definitely the book of Revelation in the Bible. It has, again, so much imagery and so much drama and, just is a wealth of inspiration. Actually, each of the main young Nephilim characters in the book, in addition to one of the characters we've yet to meet in the second book, they are based on representations of the 7 churches talked about in the book of Revelation. So I'm not going to say which character is which church because that would give away things that happen later on in the series. But yeah, a lot of their struggles and the things that they go through as characters are drawn from the struggles that each of those churches had, and the things that they had to endure.
As always, we asked our featured author what she wishes she could tell her early writing self.
Oh goodness, so many things. I think number one would be to take my time and really, figure out which step of the process needs to be made in what order, figure out the to-do list and then just go down one by one, do everything in the right order, not get ahead of myself. And I think really just be prepared for setbacks. My book, I was shooting for May and it came out in November. So I think it was just, better to take it slow and have it be done right, and have a book that I'm proud of than to rush things and have a book that's a hot mess and, really looks self-published. And so I think it was a learning experience for sure, and one that I, would not hesitate to do again. I loved every minute of it. But definitely, I think to not be too hard or too critical on myself and to view it as a learning experience and to just enjoy the process, and to just really have fun with it, because the creative arts should be fun. They're supposed to be an outlet. And so I think when we let it stress us out and everything, that just robs us of the joy that it should be bringing. So I would say, I would just remind myself to have fun, relax, take it easy, do things right, and take my time and not rush myself or stress myself out, for sure.
During the review segment, we mentioned that Transgression is used to support a wonderful organization called Rafa House. Here's what Brandy Ange had to say about who they are and how her book helps victims of sexual exploitation.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking about Rafa House. I literally am in love with this organization. Rafa House is a nonprofit that works rescuing children out of the human sex trafficking industry. And this is a cause that literally just breaks my heart every time I think about what these kids experience on a daily basis. And so they're actually stationed in several different countries all over the world, and they rescue the children and they put them in safe houses. And in the safe houses, they, are physically tended to, they're mentally and emotionally tended to, and just every manner of healing that these kids need. Rafa House is there to meet every need and just really work with them to restore them. And, they learn workable trade skills and they're set up for futures with careers and jobs and just so much more hope and such a bright future for these kids that are rescued. They also do a lot of preventative work. They do a lot of education, and they're very active in trying to prevent at-risk children from being taken in the first place, which is great because if we can stop this cycle before it starts, then that's wonderful. So they're working at it from multiple fronts, trying to just shut this industry down. And I think we have a part to play in this. I think that the human trafficking industry is actually the largest growing industry in our world today, and that is a scary thought. And I think the only reason that that's possible is because good people choose to sweep it under the rug and not think about it. But if we become aware, if we choose to act, if we choose to say, this is not something I want in the world that I live in, we have the ability to shut this thing down. And so I think the more people we get on board, the more people we get to open our eyes and actually look at the situation rather than, looking away. And the more people we have, who are blessed with resources like we are here in America, to fund endeavors like Rafa House in preventing this from being an issue and, rescuing the people out of this industry and just, partnering together. And I say joining the battle because this is spiritual warfare. This is, very, very dark, scary thought processes that go on in the minds of those who run this industry. And, it's very sick. And I definitely believe that this is a work of Satan. This is demonic, and I think it's terrifying, and I don't want it in our world. So I felt very convicted to do whatever I could to help and stop this from happening. And so I was already donating to several organizations at the time, and I didn't really have much money left over at the end of the month to be able to donate. But I figured if I self-published the book and I didn't have to split royalties with anyone else, and I could split my royalties, so to speak, with Rafa House. And so I, determined the percentages of, what was I going to need to keep to, print more books and cover shipping charges and that sort of thing. And then, anything else that could possibly be taken and left over, instead of keeping it, I would send it to Rafa House. And so I do that quarterly. I total up my book sales every quarter, and then I donate all of the excess to Rafa House. And they're such a lovely organization. They're such a wonderful group of people, and they work very hard to try to tackle this problem right. There's so many ways that, sometimes people try to help and they end up doing more harm than good, but I really think that they know what they're doing. They're doing a fantastic job. Their hearts and their minds are definitely in the right place. And I'm a huge fan of this organization. I would definitely say go and check them out on their website. There's a lot more information there than what I was able to cover just now briefly. And it's rafahouse.org. And it's just, such a wonderful, wonderful organization. And you could also go to my website, brandyange.me, and there's a little bit more information there as well. But yeah, please consider donating. Just look them up. They also have a shop with tons of really cute stuff. I buy all of my purses from Rafa House, and I get compliments on all of them. So even if you don't want to donate, just go and shop at their store, because that money still goes to help the cause and everything. So yeah, definitely please check them out.
While researching for this episode, I spoke to a member of this organization named Gabe about ways that our listeners can help. And he brought up the Rafa House Safe House program. Here's how the safe houses work. Each safe house gives child survivors of slavery and sexual exploitation the chance to reclaim their lost childhood. Each day, girls are treated with love and value instead of abuse and neglect. These safe houses are staffed by trained experts from the local community who understand the culture and know how to work with the children through comprehensive and trauma-informed care. By walking with these girls on their healing journey, Rafa House is helping them reach a life of sustainable freedom. In order to break the chains of despair and unlock the door to freedom, children need intensive, specialized services. Rafa House calls these services the keys to freedom. They include
safety and basic care, foundational needs such as shelter, food, clothing, and security, counseling and medical, healing for wounded hearts and bodies, education and training, which is personalized education and vocational training plans, social work and legal advocacy, community social work with the pursuit of justice.
And the final key is you. Head over to rafahouse.org/programs/safehouses. Don't worry, that link will be in our show notes, to learn how you can join the fight for the lasting freedom of survivors. So that brings us to the end of the program, Marie. So any final thoughts on Transgression?
It's a must-have. It's a must-have for your shelves, for your Kindle, for everything. I haven't gotten too far beyond what you and I have read here, what we read on Indie Beginning, but I'm just going to sit down and dedicate an entire day to finishing this book because it's amazing.
And I'm going to go ahead and alienate most of our listeners right now by saying that this will be my first young adult novel that I've read, because I have not read Harry Potter and do not plan to. But I will be reading Transgression. And before we leave, everybody, I think my co-host Marie has an announcement to make.
So on Monday, my very own book series, ACN, has released its second book called Sister's Lament. And that took a long, long time, but this book is my pride and joy. It's hands down my favorite so far.
All right, so everybody get out there and get your copies of Transgression and Sister's Lament. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to Indie Beginning on the podcast platform you enjoy. All reviews were selected from Amazon, Goodreads, or acnbooks.com. Head there to read them in full or leave your own review after you purchase the book. Music found in this episode was written and performed by Josh Woodward and is titled The Voices. I would like to give a special thanks to my co-host Marie for being a wonderful mother to our children and spending some of her day recording this episode of the podcast. I am your host, Benjamin Frankie, asking everyone to read more books, be the best possible you, give your mother an extra hug today, and simply enjoy this wonderful life. Thanks for listening. And happy Mother's Day to my mom, Charlotte. Bet she thought I left her out.